the map's usually a good place to start. Now, just for convenience, we're actually stood right in the corner over here. The hut is here because it's next to the visitor centre. It's original, one of the something like 1,500 huts that were scattered all across the chase. We don't know where this one was. It went off to a local village and was their village hall for about 75 years. And then about 10 years ago we got it restored and brought back here. It's pretty much in its original condition, but this is what the men would have lived in. 2 camps. This closest to us here was known as Rugeley Camp. The other one there is Brockton Camp. That is Brockton Village, and the little houses are still there today. It was started in 1914 and opened in the spring of 1915. There were 20,000 men in each camp, total of 40,000. They did about 12 weeks basic training here, where they were learning marching, digging trenches, rifles, bayonets, grenades, anything they needed before they went off to fight. That is the easiest one to demonstrate, is 1 battalion. It had a parade ground at the front with the officers' huts along one side, and then at the back 36 huts like this one with the men living in, with a cookhouse, drying rooms, shower block, and then washrooms and latrines around the outside. And each one of those is repeated. Just as an aside, I've heard the Forestry Commission have been digging up some of the stuff somewhere near the Takaroo caravan site very recently.
Clearing it, I mean, or exposing?
Clearing trees and fetching concrete out with it.
Damaging it.
Yeah. But I suppose they can do what they like.
Well, they shouldn't do.
Well, anyway, as well as that, this is known as Sherbrooke Valley, and there's a little stream runs through the middle. And then on the high ground here, these lumps represent the firing ranges where they were learning to shoot rifles. There's actually 8 ranges in total, with the stop up there and then the firing positions up to 600 yards. They had to be able to fire
15 rounds
in a minute. And it's all hand-loaded rifles before they got their full pay at, was it 400 yards there? And they were firing for up to 600 yards.
Probably was near 400.
You taking them for a walk? Is that the plan?
If we get time, yeah.
Whereabouts are you planning to go?
No idea. Next question.
There's either the hospital or part of Rugeley Camp, but
right.
the girls got to be on the train for 5. So.
Right. Just to give you an idea, if you go to the Rugeley Camp, you'll be looking at numbers 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Which is that area.
We can do a quick one round there because it's good paths.
Yeah. That's the area you'll be going to look at. That's number 2 battalion. It's just down the road from here, but that's just so you've got a picture where you're going. Now, as well as the camps, they built there a hospital, 1,000 beds, and that was for wounded men coming back from the battle, from the Western Front. They were all amputees, shell-shock victims, gas victims. And because of the nature of the victims there, they kept the hospital in use till 1924, where they were trying to rehabilitate and train. They had training workshops and everything in there. And then later it became a village. Local mining company used it as housing for their workers and the families. What else do I need to talk about in here?
Water, electric.
Oh yeah, thank you. They built something like 10 miles of drainage underground. The camps had everything. They had churches, chapels, synagogues, cinema, theatre, shops, banks. They've got to pay them in.
In the camp?
In the camp, yes. They're all
like small towns.
These buildings along outside the camp itself, but along the side of the road, these and little groups like this were the shops and the other facilities that they needed. They got everything they wanted. I mean, one of these was a motor garage which was separate to the camps, but they repaired motor vehicles and ran a taxi service to take the men into town. They were confined to the camp. They weren't allowed out for the first few weeks, but when they'd had sufficient training, they were allowed out, and we believe caused trouble in the local towns when they went to get a drink and didn't mix well with the local community, probably.
They mix well with the local ladies, but not with the local men.
Yeah. Up here, oh yes, they built right from down there, this dark line, the grey lines are roadways and most of them are still there today, but that darker line was a railway which came from the main line down there, did a loop round Rugeley camp here, but the main part of it continues right across Cannock Chase, a line going down to serve those battalions, but then this one comes right the way across, past the thing I'm going to talk about in a minute, and then right the way out to the other side to Milford where it joins the main line between Stafford and, I suppose it goes to London eventually the other way.
London to Crewe.
London to Crewe, main line. Now up here on Rugeley camp, they needed, obviously you've got to supply water for all these men. That square thing there is a 30,000 gallon water tank. Don't ask me what it is in litres. It's a big water tank. It's very useful to us because it features in a lot of photographs so we can work out where they are. But to get the water, they built there, the 4 chimneys are a power station, supplied electricity to the camp, this camp, and it also pumped water from 3 boreholes that were sunk alongside it to feed the water tank. So they got water for cooking and washing. I said about sewage drainage systems. Well, they had a sewage plant. There's one there. There's one down there. And if you did go to the hospital, you'd walk past. There's another one there. The 4 little circles there. So they were treating all the waste, keeping everything clean, and really looking after it. The men who were coming were a lot of them the local Pals Brigade. The whole village joined up together, which they realised after was a mistake, because if they all went into battle together, you've got the risk of losing all the men from one village. So later in the war, they mixed them up a lot more, but they'd be coming together. A lot of men who probably not had very good lives at home. They were probably sharing beds with brothers in cramped conditions, very poor background. So they came to these camps. Initially, they probably thought they were well off, getting paid, getting 3 meals a day, having a bed to themselves. If we look at the hut, the beds would have been a bit closer together because there would be 17 along each side, 34 men in a hut. They had just the one stove, which would meet in the middle to keep them warm, and they had 1 bucket of coal a day to try and keep them warm. They ate in the hut. Somebody would go and collect the food from the cookhouse. We'll let you have a walk through in a minute, and they eat in the hut again. I'll have a look round at the boards in a minute. You can see what they did. Now at the end there we've got the New Zealand flag, and the reason for that is the New Zealand Rifle Brigade made Brockton Camp the headquarters of their reserve battalion in 1917, so there were thousands, maybe more New Zealanders here at any one time. A lot of them, they came from New Zealand, long trip on a ship, and then train up here before they did their final training before going into battle. Now they built the Machines model, which Trevor has mentioned. Oh, it's there, it's not on the board. It's a model built after the Battle of the Machines, and if you look, you can see it's got roadways, it's got trench systems. That's the village that was on a high ground. It had been occupied by the Germans for about 3 years. Had suffered a lot of damage already. But the battle itself, it was the first real victory for the Allies. They took everything, all their objectives, very quickly. They built models like this on the battlefront so that they could plan their attack. Yeah. They could look at it and plan their attack. This one was built after the battle, but they used it as a training aid so men could learn to map read and they could learn battle tactics. And we think that some of the instructors that were in the camp would have had the experience of that battle, so they actually stand there and say, I was with the section that moved from this position and we took that, so they could explain how the battle worked. The model is still there. It was excavated. Why'd you back there? Sorry, mate. It was excavated. Where are we? That's a picture of the I mean, that's that picture, I think, or a bit of it. This is the excavation that was 3 or 4 years ago now. It's a bit more than that, perhaps. and the majority of it is still there under the ground. Unfortunately, because it's delicate, it had to be covered over to preserve it, so you can't see, you can see the site of it. To give you an idea of the scale of it, that's one of the buildings that was taken from there, and these are some of the bits that were marking roadways and trenches. Anything else on that?
I can get hold of a copy of that report as well if you like.
That's,
The measurement model, so
yeah,
that's it, isn't it?
yeah, that's repeat the copy in here. Although I've been told by Dave the Gun that it's not great.
Well, better than that.
Some of the historical
Well,
and the way he explained it, I'm inclined to believe him. That's some machines. Try not to go too quickly. What else? Yeah.
So this is always very
Yes.
and how did you get all the details based on photography or?
We've got some photographs, but we've got. I'm trying to think. We've got plans like this. I mean, this is taken from other plans, but in the records office they've got copies of that's just the Rugeley camp, but they've got copies of the plans, so they would have been used to make the model. And LiDAR, because we had yeah, we've had this LiDAR survey done recently, and that confirms everything that on the model is accurate.
yeah, the map that Simon just showed you, they've superimposed part of that map onto an ordnance survey map just to show you that, and it is bang on because the LiDAR, these are those images they took where they flew over the chase, bombarded it with lasers, cut through all the vegetation, all the deep ferns and heather, and you can see these are trenches where they practice digging trenches. These are the bases of where all the little huts are there and the drainage channels. Absolutely incredible detail, and that's even the railway cutting that went past the water tower Simon mentioned as well. That's just a roadway. And again, I can give you a link to this so you can look at this yourself. That's a bit more zoomed into the trenches. They had to, again, like I said, practice digging their trenches at night, repairing them, instead of being shocked when they got to the battlefront and not knowing what's happened. Part of the camp disappeared because that's after the First World War, before the Second World War. That was a quarry that was dug for sand and gravel because Cannock Chase sits on a superb bed of sand and gravel which is needed as and when we need to build roads and so 2 of the battalion lines on Brockton Camp have disappeared, they've gone forever, but the rest of them are still here. And you can look at pictures of this on the internet, but it's not as good as walking around it. So when you come back another time, we can take you on the chase and show you some of the places, and we find it very interesting, and I hope you would. And again, just some more. That's a modern village of Brockton at the moment, but this was called J lines. I think that was called J lines. Brockton Camp was lettered A, B, C, D, E. Rugeley Camp was numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. We think that was because if you were sending your boyfriend a postcard to Cannock Chase camps, if you said he was on A lines, you'd know it goes to Brockton. If you said he was on number 4 lines, it'd go to Rugeley. Makes sense, you know. So it doesn't struggling to find him. And like I say, I can send you a lot of these images again. These are the books. These are general ones, but these are local history book. That's about the prisoner of war camp. Superb. I can get hold of a copy of that for you as well. And it's the Germans that built the Messines model under supervision of the New Zealanders. That's a superb book. This is the book that really started the whole interest in the Cannock Chase Great War Camps. This gentleman's only recently passed away, but in the 1980s, him and his wife walked the Cannock Chase, noticing all these lumps and bumps, and created the story. With a lot of research, you will need to, at some time you come up here, go to the County Record Office in Stafford. They've got a lot of information there. But this is a very good starting point to read. This book is. That's one done by the council, which really is a lot of stuff out of there. This is a nice one. I've actually met this author. He's from New Zealand, and that's what's it called?
Frida.
Yeah, what's its make? It's not a Great Dane.
Harlequin
Great Dane. People think it's Dalmatian, but it isn't. A Harlequin Great Dane. Anyway, what the author did, because he's from New Zealand, and that was the mascot of the New Zealand Rifle Brigade, and they were given this little puppy as their mascot. It grew up and became their mascot on ceremonial parades. So what the gentleman did, he did a lovely story based on it, which is fabricated, but still a nice story. A little bit of the proper stories inside there as well. And little did he know when this gentleman wrote the story, and even the lady that did the beautiful artwork, they did not know until they did this that their ancestors, grandparents, great-grandparents, came to Britain to fight in the war. They didn't even know that, which is unbelievable, isn't it? You would think they would know that. So, like I say, I can make sure you can get access to all this book, all this literature, which will be a good starting point for you. And there's a superb war diary we've got hold of a gentleman that served at Brockton Camp, which is where the Messines model was. He's a New Zealander. He kept a diary of how the troops trained. That is an absolute gold mine of information to get your mind around it. Right, I've got to tidy this little bit up. Do you want to have a little walk around before we go off and look at one of the camps?
Yeah.
Look at some of the pickies and make out the
They did a scan and create a 3D model of the actual model.
Yes.